Well, I think we're live. G'day everyone, welcome back to the usual Friday show. This is the new time now. I'm just checking I've got everything off. Yeah, I have. I always forget to turn some things off, and I've got to be careful because then I have other audio coming through and stuff like that. I can see people are already trashing because of the comment I've got about Nikon struggling. So Casper and Photomiak are having a go at each other already. In the live chat. Oh, what a crack up you guys are. It's going to go off today, that's for sure. So welcome. We're going to have a little bit of pre-show just to let people know that we're live, because people just don't get the notifications. So that's one of the problems with this. So I'm going to give it around 5 minutes that we can start this. Let me start the timer. Start stopwatch. I'm only a couple of minutes out, won't matter. So I'm going to pop over to see who's in the chat. So let's see who's here. I'll just hide this pre-show so that we can see all the chats that are coming through. So Hero's here, a moment of silence for Olympus. Initially I put something else. I had to redo this because I put the wrong word. No, I'm not going to say it because I'll get demonetized, but it was quite funny. Someone messaged me to say you've spelt something wrong. What else have we got? So here I said a moment of silence for Olympus. That's cracking me up. Way too early. Got stuff to do, Mr. Osler. What happened to the good old days when the Sony drinking game? I know, Casper, but the problem is it's daylight savings changes. It's 9 o'clock in the morning here. I'll still be doing drinking games. It's just that it's not that warm today. We've only got a top of 20 today. When it's nice and hot, I'm just... I don't care. I'll just have a drink with you anyway. What happened to the good old drinking days? I remember that. Casper's already saying Nikon is dead. Oh, love it. Carl is saying, hello, David and friends. Mark's saying 8 a.m. here, a bit late. Where are we? Guy with the camera said, hello, everyone. Photomiak says, yeah, you better run, trash boy. They're going to go off at each other today for sure. We're already up at 4:48 sunrise. Gary's saying, hey all. I should put my thing on silent as well. I think my phone's in the house actually. Let me just put my watch on silent. Peter said, g'day Peter, congratulations on your 100,000 subscribers. Fantastic. So happy for you, mate. Photomiak says, but I agree, this is way too early. It's not early for the Europeans, though. Carl said, every week is a new time. No, this is the new time now, Carl. 9 o'clock, Melbourne time. So what's the time in... Oh, I haven't got it here. What time is it in New York at the moment? Let me know just in the chat, because I'm just curious to know. David says, hello, Dave. How are you? Oreo said, g'day all. Mark said, hi. Ben said, 1 thumbs down already. I have. I've got 10 thumbs up and 1 thumbs down already. What's going on with you guys? Is that because I've started early or what? I don't know. Guy with the camera didn't get this notification, but did get Tony Northrup's share. That's probably because he's one of the YouTube favourites. I'm probably not. Master Stone said, hey David and everyone. G'day mate, how are you? Nivak said, hello, YouTube notifications have been doing well for me in recent weeks. Wow, that's good. John said, hello, David. G'day, John. Just grabbed my first mulled wine of the year, and Mr. Osler is checking in for some camera talk. Feel like Christmas already. Cheers from Germany, mate. Thanks, Bjorn. Mark said, Northrops are doing their live shows talking about people's pets. Oh, how boring. Are you serious? Oh. David said, hi Dave, Peter said I'm having a whiskey. Woohoo, Peter. Like I said, once we warm up, I mean, we will start warming up now, that's for sure. It's high 30s next week, I think. I'm just going to have a drink with you at 9 o'clock in the morning. Who cares? It's afternoon somewhere in the world, isn't it? Master Stone said, I'm not sure what he's talking. Oh, he's talking to Peter. A7iv releasing soon. No, I'm just going to talk about the rumours about that camera, MBW, that's all. Hip Hop for Kids said, hello, mate. Peter said, haha, totally Magnus. He's talking to someone else. Not early for the US. Is that drinking time you're talking about, or where were we? Oops. Andre says, hello, David. Thinking of the Panasonic SH1 for video. That's a great video camera, Andre. If I wasn't in the Sony camp and had to sort of grab everything new, I probably would jump on that myself. MJ says, cheers, David Osler. Carl said 5 p.m. at New York. Well, that's not too early, is it? Langston says, good afternoon, everyone. G'day, Langston. MBW says 5 o'clock. Yep. Zoet says, hey, David, is this the new time for the stream? Yes. So from now on, it's going to be this time every week. Because of daylight savings, we've gone back an hour here in Melbourne. So, yes, this will be the new time. 5 p.m. Yeah, Pierre says, hi, this is the perfect time for France. Well, thank you, Pierre. We might, like I said, we might get a completely different audience or a different mix now because the Europeans can still be not in bed or whatever. So it may be a good time for the moment. Mark said, congrats, Peter Lindgren, your stuff. Yeah, Peter's doing fantastic. I'm so happy for Peter. It's a bit early for me now. I still need to get the kids. Yeah, I know. At LA time, what is it there? Would it be about 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon, Langston? I thought Google sent me an old video. Hip 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 for the kids, 5 p.m. Nivak, 2 p.m. in the US West Coast. Okay, so it is 2 p.m. Yeah. What's 0007 said there? The thumbs down happened when the original title was Olympus. Down, I know. Someone messaged me to say, David, you've put the wrong thing in Olympus. And I noticed they demonetized it. So I had to get rid of it and put up a new one. You can tell the word I'd use because if you look at 777s there, you can see the word that was put there. It's midnight in Helsinki. Photo says here in Germany it's 11 p.m. MJ, who's Tony Northrup? I love it. Guy with camera said, time slot works for me right before my kids get off school. Zoet says, it's 10 p.m. here, but I like this time before the time was around 2 a.m. UK. Yeah, I know it was an issue for the Europeans, that's for sure, the previous time zone. What's in that water bottle? It's just water, Ben. What do you mean? It's just not hot enough today. It's only 13 degrees Celsius today. Like, it's not hot enough for a beer. Last week I had a beer with you guys because it was a hot day. But when it heats up, I will still have a beer. It is only water, Ben. No, it's a great time. Enjoy this and go to bed and have sweet dreams. I love it. Photomix says, this chat usually happens around 5 p.m. my time. Now it's happening at 2 p.m. That's 3 hours makes a difference. Yeah, I suppose it's good for some, Photomic, and not good for others, I suppose. Pets are important. The problem was, if I go later, like when it was later, I'd lost my whole day almost, or the whole morning. Whereas this way, I'll be finished probably 10:30, and then I've still got the day ahead of me that I can do things. So it sort of works around me a little bit more. Plus, it also lets, like I said, the Europeans come in because it's not too late for them. So we'll get more Europeans in this chat. So it'll work out. And I suppose if it's just not the right time for the live chat, you can always watch the stream later. Langston says pets are important. I love it. I love my dog Ziggy. Mark said, hey, David, a nice relief from the fires here in Oz. I know we've had such bad fires here. Not where I live, but they're more up in New South Wales and Queensland, some in South Australia. I'm sure we'll get our turn once the summer hits, that's for sure. MJ said, I'll set my own alarm weekly. Thanks, MJ. Oreo said, Peter Lingman was 16K in the last 2 days. Only am I wrong, mine. But I know he's growing. Peter's growing unbelievably fast. But his stuff's great, so good on him. Need Bob's help. Of course they are coming out with the a7 IV. I just paid for the a7 III last week. That's what always happens to me. Eli says, hey. Kevin says, hi, David. What's your thought on the Sony 90mm macro lens? It's a great lens. It's a little bit slow in focusing, but incredibly sharp. I use the smaller one. I use the 35 APS-C lens, and that's good enough for me because I don't really need a 90 macro. I don't need to be that far away from the object. I just use it really for wedding rings and stuff like that. That's really the only macro stuff that I use. But if you are into full-on macro type shooting, that's really good. Sigma have some good options as well. I think, what is it, the 50mm Sigma or something, or 55, I can't remember. But the 90 is good. It's just a bit slow in focusing though. Europeans are here for sure, which is great. Thank you, Euro. Who cares about the Europeans? That's not nice, Casper. Jamie says, hello all. G'day, Michelle. It's a little after 2 p.m. here in Los Angeles. And guys, it's getting closer. I'm going to be with you guys in less than 3 months. So please, in the photography videography school, we will start to organise meetups and stuff. And I know Gerald and Langston and some others are trying to organise some things. So we're going to have some shoot-ups in Santa Monica. We'll also be doing shoot-ups hopefully in LA and also in Vegas. We're going to do a road trip, I think, through parts of like the Grand Canyon, all through those areas. So you're welcome to join us. Join along and we can have a big road crew going all over the place. It's going to be fantastic because Gerald's got some really wonderful locations, that road trip that we're going to do through all of those areas, you know, like all the western areas and stuff like that. So I can't wait, and we'll be pulling over doing some shoots, and hopefully we'll have it'd be fantastic if we had a couple of models as well. So stay tuned for that. Now, if you do want to join us, follow along. There's no money involved. It's just giving something back to you guys. So please join us because we're going to have a ball. We're then going, it's just Kerry myself, we're then going to go up to Yosemite and San Francisco, and we'll probably have a couple of meetups up there as well. So stay tuned, but it's less than 3 months away. Graf said, g'day Dave, love your channel, keep up the good work, entertainment. Thank you so much, Graf. Carl says, hey, 5 p.m. here in New York. See, it's probably not a bad time for New York, though, I suppose, unless people want to watch it later. Casper says, thumbs down until the time is changed back. I love it. Lauren says, watching from Kenya. Well, welcome, Lauren. Hello from Slovakia. Thomas is saying there. So it says, if by this time next year Sony does not release the a7S III or 4 or 4K 60p, I'm going to the SH1. Well, you might find that a few people do too. I can only wait so long myself. Casper said he knows nothing about the 90mm macro. I've used it, Casper. What do you mean I know nothing about it? Livac said, I love the 90 macro. Most macro I use manual focus. Agree it's slow to autofocus. It's also 7 years old and older tech. Yeah, I think that's probably one that Sony eventually will upgrade, I would think. Heyo, waiting to see if the a7 III drops even more price in Black Friday. It may. Mark said, purchased my first GM lens yesterday, the Sony 24. I love that lens. It's one of my favourite lenses. Looking forward to the results. How did the Polar Pro Varial ND go? It's good. I've been using all the latest though. I've been using the Freewell ones and the Peter McKinnon ones. Freewell sent me though. If you check back, I did a review of it a couple of days ago. Freewell sent me to. I suppose it's a similar copy to what Peter McKinnon did. Only it's half the price, and I think they're on special. I'm not sure how long, but I think they're giving about $30 off again in pre-orders, or if you order it now, not pre-orders, but if you order it now. I certainly would recommend the Freewell ones over the Peter McKinnon ones due to the price. I mean, I purchased the Peter McKinnon ones, and they were very expensive. Having looked at it now, when I did the comparison between both, I would be getting the Freewell ones and save the money because basically it's half price over the others. And the results were just as good. They both had the similar type of cast. It was a very fraction of a green cast when you're using them, but so simple to fix in Final Cut or everything else. And if you want to see the video results from it, check out where I showed video at the end because that had no correction at all. So that'll give you an idea about the type of results that you'll get using it without correction at all. I did also show from the back of my house looking towards the studio, I did show how the cast is there between, say, not having a filter on, having the filter on, and then also with the Peter McKinnon filter. So I showed all three together, and then I did a correction, a simple correction. So check those out if you haven't looked. So I think that the good part is with those filters, there's no crosshatch. The problem is with your normal Varial NDs, most of them do a crosshatch that comes across. when you try and push them up too far, when they go too dark, because they're basically two polarizers, that's what they are, they're polarizer filters, they stick one polarizing filter on top of another one. And as they move around, eventually you start to get a crosshatch. Well, when they do it in the two versions of it, like a 2 to 5 and then a 6 to 9, you don't get that problem. So it's great if you're in, say, really bright sunlight and you want to really use a dark ND, you're not going to get that cross that shows up. That's why I think they're so good, those filters. What else have we got? Casper says the 90 macro is super fast on the A9. Yeah, I haven't used it on the A9, Casper. I only tried it on the a7 III. Which gimbal should I buy? Weebill, Moser, Air or Crane? Well, I can only tell you what I love. 0007, I love the Moser Air 2. That's the one that I love the most of any gimbal I've used. And I still adore using that gimbal. I've got Firetech, I've got the Moser Air Cross, and some others as well. But I love the Moser Air 2. That's my favourite. You could get the Moser Air Cross too. You could have a look at that. I haven't tried that yet. But that's the one that I recommend. Every time you say YouTube, you say Peter McKinnon on YouTube, Angel gets their wings. Why is that? Thomas said, hey David, I hope you are okay from the fires. Yeah, they're not down here. They are massive fires though. They're about 1,000 kilometres long. So they are huge, which is crazy when you think about it, because we're not even in summer yet. So it's a bad sign for our summer. I'm sure we will have bad fires here. We always do. I think we had, when we had Black Friday here, it actually almost came to where I live. We were just on the point of getting evacuated. 107 people unfortunately died in those fires. It was terrible, and I can't remember how many homes. I think it was 2,000 homes or something were destroyed. So we do get really bad fires here in Australia, similar to LA, similar to what you're having over there at the moment. So yeah, but at the moment, no, we're totally safe down here, but I'm sure that will change as summer starts to kick in. Joseph said, what was that? I hope you're okay with the fires. In Sweden, it's the dark times, wet and cold, damp. I would love to switch place with you. Yeah, it is starting to get lovely here now. Joseph, what are your thoughts on buying a used A9? I wouldn't hesitate. Oh, and I'll talk to you about my A9. Remember, I had that problem. I'll talk to you about that in a minute. How are we going for time? 16 minutes. I'm going to have to start the live show, actually. That'll be it. All right, let's just go over. I'm going to switch here, and then we'll start the show, because I don't want to take too long on that. G'day everyone. I was just trying to put the time in, so it was taking me longer. I put the wrong time in. Welcome to our usual show now. This is going to be the usual time we're going to have now from now on, which is 5 o'clock Melbourne time, and it's going to be roughly 5 o'clock New York time and 2 p.m. LA time. It's better for me because then it gives me the day that I can do some editing and whatever I'm shooting or whatever else that I'm going to do. So we've got some interesting things to discuss today. We've got a stack of news, actually. There is some sort of Sony rumours, but we're also going to discuss Olympus and Nikon as well. So there's a few things that we're going to talk about there as well. So I wanted to talk to start with about what happened with my A9. Apparently it's come back. I missed the delivery yesterday, so it's gone to the post office, but I did get notified from Sony Pro Support. So it wasn't the camera that was at the issue. Remember, well, I'll sort of explain what happened anyway. With my camera, I noticed that when I did a wedding video recently, I had corruption of video coming through a few files right the way through the card. And I just thought it was a one-off thing. I thought it was because I was using a gimbal and it was plugged into the power. I thought there may have been a power issue and that's what caused it. Anyway, when I did this massive shoot last weekend, it went for 2 days, I noticed that when I got home on the second day, it was okay on the first day, but on the second day when I got home, I noticed when I was looking in the back of the camera, I noticed that it should have had 1,400 images, and I often check that to see how many photos I've taken during the day, and I think it was around 1,490. But when I went to put it into the computer, it was only showing 900 odd, so it had lost 500 images. They just weren't there, which was really bizarre. So I thought, well, what I'll do is I'll just check the second card, which the way that I work is I shoot RAW on one card, JPEG to the other, and for some reason they were all there on the JPEG card. So I was saved from the fact that I have a dual card slot camera. And this is why I say to everyone, whatever you do, do not do a paid shoot unless you have dual card slots. So it looks like they've contacted me back and they've said to me that it looks like it's the card. Well, it's the card that's the problem. Now, the interesting thing here is that this is the second time that this has happened on those Sony cards. So this was the Sony 128. It's the fast one, the 300 megabits per second card. So this is the second one of those cards that failed. The first one that failed had sort of little stripes that were all through it, little color sort of bands, like it was pixels that were doing something a bit weird, and they were through all the images. So Sony replaced that card for me and gave me this new one. Well, less than 12 months later, I've had these corruptions on this card again, and that worries me because I'm just wondering if that's the case, how reliable are these cards? Now, it's happened twice to me. I do shoot a lot of shoots, so I mean I am using them quite a bit, but I do always format my cards in the camera like they tell you to, take the images off, and then I'll format the cards again in the camera. So I am doing what they recommend you to do. I do not delete images off the camera or anything like that. I just get it, I just do it as it is. Now, the funny thing is, yeah, Mark said get Sony Tough cards, but I'm not sure now, Mark, what I want to do about this. I think Sony are going to give me a replacement card again, but I can tell you I've never had a SanDisk that's failed on me. So that's the interesting thing here. So I've had two Sony cards in 12 months, and both of them have failed after a period of time of fairly heavy usage. But I've got SanDisk cards that I've used the same time, and I've never ever had one fail. So it's a little bit of a worry. Mark's saying the Sony Tough cards are made from different material, yeah. But, you know, I paid a lot of money for that card. I can't remember what it was. I think it was $250 or something like that. So it wasn't cheap. And this is the second time that card now has failed. Whereas I've found that the SanDisk have never failed on me. And it's a bit of a worry. So I just wanted to keep you updated anyway to let you know what's happened there. That it's not the A9. I had to send the A9 in anyway because I've never got around to changing the hot shoe. It got recalled due to the hot shoe. Has to be replaced. So I did send it back and they've replaced that for me and they've cleaned it. I mean, Sony Pro Support are fantastic. So it does look like, I don't know, I mean, I can't recommend the Sony cards, unfortunately. I'm a bit reluctant to get any Sony cards at the moment due to the fact that it's happened to me twice now. I may just stick with SanDisk, but Mark was saying that the Sony Tough cards, but Mark, the only problem with those is they haven't been around long enough to see if, you know, if there are issues with them. But like I said, I've never ever had a SanDisk fail, so I don't know. I might just stick with SanDisk from now on. So that's keeping you up to date with what's happened there. So let's go to the first story anyway. So I'm just going to put down here. Sony, we're going to go to the Sony specs. So 2240. All right, so let's go to the first story because I wanted to talk about this. Where are we? Let me close that. These specs, I noticed in Sony Alpha rumors that there was specs released that were talking about what could possibly be in the a7 IV, and I thought I might talk to you about this because I think the a7 IV is probably going to be the next camera that's going to be announced. I don't think it's going to be the a7S III. The rumours on that side of the a7S III at the moment have just died out. I'm not hearing anything. Just let me mark on here too where we're up to. I'll just put it out there. So yeah, I think the a7 IV might be the next camera that's announced. Now, Sony Alpha Room has put out a list that this guy did. He thinks it's going to be the specs that are going to be there, and looking at them, they're a bit blah, really. But I think they'll probably give us more than that. I'm hoping they do. But just to show you what they are, let me just see if I can. It's hard to read, but I'll just blow this up and give you a look. So they're saying that it's going to be a 24 megapixel sensor. Now, I don't think that's true. I think they will probably jump up in resolution. This is what I'm predicting anyway. This guy is predicting that it's going to be a 24 megapixel. I'm predicting it's going to be something like a 36. My feeling is that last time that Sony brought out the a7 III, they blew everyone out of the water. And I think they will probably try and do the same thing with the a7 III. So I think there'll be a bump up in specs for the megapixel. I don't think it's going to be 24. I think it will be something like 36. That's what my guess is going to be. Everything else that they're saying down here is basically the same, like your effective pixels, pixel size, ISO is all the same. The IBIS is going to be the same, 5.5 stops. Your focus is not going to change. But when they say focus is not going to change, I think you'll find that we're probably going to get the A9 tracking in this. So they will improve the autofocus dramatically as compared to the a7 III. Not that the a7 III is no good. It is. It's still amazing. But I do love the tracking of the A9. So you probably will get the tracking of the A9 on this as well. They're saying real-time tracking you'll get in there. Animal IAF obviously will get, and things like that. I'm just going down to see. They're also saying pixel shift. And I'd love to know whether you think they'll put pixel shift in the a7 IV. On here, he's predicting that you will get pixel shift on the a7 IV. Dual media slots, both fast. I would think that would be a given now on all the latest cameras. I think they're going to go to the a7R4 body. I think that now will become the standard for any new releases that come out. So you will get the dual UHS-2 card slots. Hope we get Type-C USB in the camera. 10 frames per second with AEF tracking. 12-bit, 14-bit, 12-bit and 14-bit RAW images. I would think that will be the same. And I don't think there's anything else. Video, they're saying basically that it's going to be the same as what we had previously, which is just the 4K 30, but I think I'll talk about that in a minute. They're saying that we'll get the high resolution view EVF, and I think that will be true. I would hope that we do get that new EVF, that 5.6 million dots EVF, and that's about it. Let me just turn that off. Ooh. So I've got a feeling, and I'll tell you what I think Sony are going to do. I'm not 100% convinced that we're going to see an a7S III, and I've talked about this before. I hope we do, but I'm not 100% convinced that we will see one because those rumours have just died out. And also, I think the longer that we wait in between what's going on here, how Sony was saying they were going to exceed expectations, it gets harder and harder for Sony to do that. So there's either going to be two ways of looking at this. The a7 IV is going to be like the true hybrid camera. It's going to have less megapixels than the a7R IV. So that's why I'm saying, say, 36 megapixels. And also, you could potentially have 4K 60 in that camera. Now, if you're talking about noise, when they're saying the A7S was always for sensitivity, so we're always talking about light sensitivity on the A7S. Well, I don't know if we need a specific camera any longer for sensitivity because the ISO of these latest cameras is nuts. I mean, if you're looking at the a7 III, the ISO on that camera is absolutely outstanding. Yes, the a7R IV does suffer a little bit, but that's due to the fact that it is a 60 megapixel camera. The a7 III is a little bit better if you're dealing with ISO. The a7 III is better again. So I don't think ISO any longer is a real problem, and and there's probably tweaks and stuff that they can do with that anyway. So, do we need a specific camera for low light? And this is why I'm saying I don't think we do any longer. I think the cameras we've got are ample. The A9, the a7 III, the a7R III, all unbelievable cameras if you're dealing with ISO. And I mean, I can shoot in low light weddings with those without a problem. Bump up the ISO or even add lighting if I need to. But I used to have the a7S II and I sold that. I just don't need that low light anymore. I just don't think we need it. So is it possible, and I'd love to know what you think about it, and we'll have a chat about this in a minute, but even talk about it in the questions below if you're not watching this live. But I would not be surprised if Sony do again what they did with the a7 III, that they release a game-changing camera that's the a7 IV, that is the true multimedia type camera. In other words, the true video and stills camera all built into one. Now, it is possible, and who knows if Sony is going to do this. I mean, I don't know, but this is just what I'm thinking, and I'm just sharing this with you guys, that I think this could be the perfect camera to do it. You know, that they could add, say, a 36 megapixel sensor. You may have to use crop mode to get the 4K 60. I'm fine with that if you had crop mode. I just need a camera with 4K 60 due to the fact that being a one-man show, I love to be able to crop in, and that's the reason why I like to use 4K, is the ability to crop in. Now, if I'm doing weddings, I can shoot 4K 30, but then I can't slow it down. So I can crop in, but then I can't slow down. So it's important for me to have that ability to be able to crop into the image and also to slow it down in 4K. And don't forget, in a couple of years, 4K probably will be the standard. So, you know, you're sort of future-proofing your work if you shoot with 4K. The other thing is, they haven't mentioned in that article over here, they didn't mention anything about bit depth, and they have to improve the bit depth as well. So, you know, you may find that they give us 10-bit as well in that camera. So it'll be interesting to see if I'm correct. I mean, I'll still be happy if they just bring out an A7S IV or whatever it's going to be called, but Sony, just imagine if Sony brought out this amazing hybrid camera that gave us 36 megapixels. People would still want to go to the R4 if you need ultimate resolution for doing things like studio work, landscape, things like that. But if we had, say, a 36 megapixel sensor in this, good dynamic range, which we know it's going to be, great ISO, which also we know it will be, the new dual slots, the better EVF, and hopefully a better screen on the back, because let's face it, Sony is terrible for their screens in the back. It's 4-year-old technology. A better screen on the back, and perhaps that they give us 4K 60 10-bit footage in that camera. And that would be a total game changer. Now, the reason why I'm saying that's possible is because no one expected them to do what they did with the a7 III. And I think Sony has copped a little bit of flack with the last few releases that they've done because they've been very incremental. So it might be time now that Sony do it again. And the a7 IV, to me, would be the perfect camera to do that. Potentially get rid of the A7S series and give us this A7 IV that has all of those features in it, and we can use it as this true hybrid camera. A videography could use it, or a stills photographer could use it. I'm just not convinced that we're going to see an A7S IV now, due to the fact that if they make this thing ridiculous, it's going to really compete with the FS7 and these other cameras that they've got up there, and I'm not sure that Sony want to do that, and I'd love to know your opinion about that, but there's got to be reasons why that's being held back. It's either that Sony are refusing to give it to us due to the fact that the FS7 line, they don't want to take sales from that area, or the technology, they just can't put it into the current body, and that could also be an issue as well. So I just thought I'd share that with you because it's an interesting scenario. So I want to open up the chat because I'd love to know what you guys are thinking about that. So let me come back to where we were. Master Stone Setter said, got my A9 too, and boy, they made great autofocus even greater, so sticky. Yeah, I'm getting that camera next month, actually, for review for a couple of weeks, so I can't wait to try it against the A9. Jason said, just a little for your information, I just purchased the Samyang 35 1.4 and the 85 1.4, and they work great on the a7 III. I'm really impressed with how they work, especially for the price. Yeah, they are very reasonable in prices, that's for sure. The low distortion on the GM got me to buy it for boudoir. It is, that's amazing, that lens, the lack of distortion in that lens. I love that 24 GM. Guy with the camera said, I'm making a video on the Weebill versus manual gimbal, and we've been using the manual instead. Interesting. Hero said, wow, wildfires out there already. Yeah, it's pretty bad when you think we're still in spring. Not good at all. Hero says, crazy. Mike says, hello, I just saw you're online. Welcome, Mike. Dark times in Sweden. Yeah, it's winter time over there for you now. Mark said, over 60 fires here. I'm in Queensland and breathing in the smoke, but safe in my area right now. California is on fire with fake liberals. Langston says, yes, well, we also pay the bills with our high taxes. So simmer down. Oh, I can't remember what that means. I think they're just talking to each other. So Mike said, I'm thinking about I'll buy a pair of the Freewell variable filters. They look great in your video. Yeah, I would, Mike. I can't recommend them enough. Like I said, I bought the Peter McKinnon ones. And boy, they're double the price of what those filters are. And to me, the performance is just the same. So I would wholeheartedly recommend that you purchase those filters. If you do, please use the link I put in that video, because at least I get a little cutback from Amazon. I'm not just saying that though so I get a cutback. I think they are a great purchase, and I proved that in the video. The difference between the two of them is minimal. It's that close between the two of them. I would save the money and get the Freewell ones. Mark said, good to know the A9 is not the issue. Cards do fail in weird ways sometimes. Yeah, it's frustrating, Mark, that's for sure. Mark's recommending those new Sony Tough cards. Yeah, it's tough for me now, Mark, because I think if I was going to buy another card now, I'd probably get just, what was I talking about? Oh, I've gone blank now. I haven't even got them here. SanDisk. Yeah, I think if I was buying cards now, I'd just buy SanDisk. I don't know if I can justify the Sony Tough cards, and I'm just not 100% confident anymore. Look, they're going to give me a replacement card, and I mean, I'll try it again. Perhaps they've fixed these manufacturing errors up. Who knows? EVF of the a7R3. No, I think the EVF of the a7R3 is not that 5.7 million dot one. It's that's on the a7R4. I think that's probably what you'll get on the a7 IV. You'll get that 5.7 million dot EVF. Chris said 24 megapixel makes sense for their base hybrid cameras, as that's optimal for downsampling 6K. Anything higher will need pixel binning. That is an issue, and I understand that side of it. But I think people would like I'm happy with 24, to be honest. I love the 24 megapixel size for events and things like that, but I think a lot of people would like a bump up in resolution. So I wouldn't be surprised to see that 36 megapixel sensor. Bjorn says, I'm really disappointed in Sony for neglecting the needs of videographers, but I'm afraid nothing will change in the a7 IV. They have, I know, I agree with you, Bjorn. I've been frustrated myself because as I shoot weddings, do video as well, it is starting to affect my business a little bit because it makes it much harder for me. Being that, like it's only myself or Kerry usually that does these weddings, having a camera that could do video as well. Like, I know photographers always go, whatever, but a lot of people now are starting to shoot video and stills, so it's important for us. And other manufacturers are giving us those. That's why I'm hoping Sony fixes this fairly soon. Timothy said they don't want to hurt the sales of their pro video cameras. It's very short-sighted if that's the case though, Timmy, because I think a really good a7S IV or an amazing a7 IV spec camera would be a great B camera to having your high-end cameras. I don't think it would affect it at all because there's other things about having those other big cameras. Having the ability to use professional microphones with those cameras. Things like that. I mean, there's the inputs on those bigger cameras that you need. The ability to put hard drives into those cameras. There's other reasons why you'd go with an FS7 or other cameras over, say, something like a Sony a7S. The other thing too is expectation. Remember, if you're dealing with high-end videography and you're being paid as a high-end videographer, you don't really want to be going with an a7S camera. I mean, look, and I know I always have this argument with people, and it can make a difference that, if you show up to a highly paid job and you go there with an FS7 and all of this other massive gear, massive lighting equipment and everything else, you will be looked at. I know I'm not saying it's true because you can almost get the same results, but what I'm saying is that the expectation or the way that they'll look at you is more professional, and that's one other aspect of it as well, that you're sort of expected to have that look and have that gear if you're going to be doing high-end work. But there's no reason why you can't have, say, an A7S 4 or whatever you're going to do, like this high-end Sony full-frame camera that could be a B camera to that. That wouldn't even be looked at as a problem at all, as long as you were backing it up with high-end equipment. So I don't think it probably would affect sales. I think that Sony are being very short-sighted on that. Panasonic have high-end cameras, and they're doing amazing videography cameras there as well, aren't they? So full-frame cameras. So yeah, I think it's a bit of a silly strategy if Sony are thinking that way. See you in a little bit. Live, still going. Dad mode activated. He's going to pick up his kid. No worries, Langston. Add a flip screen. Yeah, I don't think we're going to get that, though. They may add it so it goes up, though, and I love that now. I hated it at first, but now I love it. I bought the PC's Blackmagic 4K. Great camera. Had too much job, and Sony never did release the a7S III. Now I use the a7R III, the a6400, and the Blackmagic. How do you go with matching the files, though, Thomas? Do you have issues matching the color profiles between all of the cameras? Is it an issue? Can you see it, or have you got that down pat now? I'd love to know what you're thinking about that or how it works. The other thing, too, that when I had the GH5, I had issues because you do things in muscle memory. I was having trouble when I was quickly switching between one camera to the other. You know, I forgot how to turn this feature on or do this and do that. Whereas when I'm using the one system with the one lenses and everything else, I don't have to think about that because everything becomes muscle memory. So that's another thing as well. But color too is an issue for me. I hate it when you can tell that it switches between scenes and the colors don't match exactly. So that would worry me. But let me know how you get around that, Thomas. I'd be curious to know. Mike said, went from the Sony a7R III to the Canon EOS R. Cool, Mike. Great camera. The only thing, like I said, I don't like about the EOS R particularly is the one card slot, which would worry me. I think if Canon bring out a dual card slot camera, they'll have a really good system. Great lenses, though, on the EOS R, that's for sure. It would be quite unfair to surpass the A9 II. Anything you miss about the a7R III? No, not really, Dan. Oh, you're talking about Mike there. I've sold my a7R. No, I had the a7R II. I very rarely used it. That's the thing. I really didn't use it. I'm not saying I won't buy an a7R IV. I might sometime next year. But I haven't really missed it much at this stage. I'm happy with that 24 megapixel, to be honest. Walter says, imagine Sony a7 IV with 4K 60, 36 megapixel, at least a a7R III EVF and the A9 AF. $2,000 market upside down. Sony, take my money. I know, what an amazing camera it would be, wouldn't it? It might be because they are very close to a global shutter sensor. See, it could be too. You may be right. Perhaps now they've decided, because they had this statement of we're going to exceed expectations, that they've decided, well, we're going to wait now to see if we can put a global shutter in this and then do a completely new redesign and hopefully get rid of all of the rolling shutter and everything else. And that could be the case. Mike says, I will buy my Freewell on Amazon, David. That's where I put those links for, Mike. Pierre said, will Sony be able to put 4K 60 in the small body? Well, that's what we don't know. Like I said, they may be able to do it if they do it crop. And I'd still be happy with that. If they gave me 4K 60 in the meantime, as a crop sensor, I would be quite comfortable with that. At least it gives me the option to shoot 4K 60. Yes, I'd lose that wide end and a little bit of the full frame look, but I could get around that and work around it. I mean, I often shoot with my a6-400 anyway, so that wouldn't be an issue. I'd be quite happy if it was a crop mode. And if it was in crop mode, obviously then you'd have a lot less heat and things like that. Hero says, yes, if they put a flippy touchscreen on the a7 IV, I'm all in. A person shooting pro video work isn't going to buy an a7S III. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. I mean, if they're shooting pro work, like I said, they'll get an FS7. Look, if you're doing the real high-ended type video work, you're not going to go to it with an a7S, that's for sure. I mean, you might get the occasional job, but I'm talking real high-ended type stuff. Ralph said, holding back to protect your higher-end gear can fire back. I agree with you, Ralph, and I think if they are doing that, that's the wrong move. The moment a competitor gives users what they want, you are in trouble. 4K 60 would be at APS-C, yep. All right, so let's go to the next story, because this was interesting. I thought, wow, Sigma are kicking goals. Let me just move this over here for a minute. So what are we, 43.50. So Sigma, apparently, let me just move this over here. Sigma apparently they've patented a new 50mm 1.2 FE lens. Wow, I mean, I've always said to you I'd love an 85 1.2, and I'm just hoping that someone brings out a native mount to Sony, whether that's going to be Sigma, whether it will be Tamron, whether it would be Sony. I don't know, but I'd love to have an 85 1.2. I just love that look. I love the look of the Canon 85 1.2. If you check out Manny Orta's video recently, he's been shooting with the Canon EOS R, and you can see that he absolutely adores using the Canon RF, the 85 1.2 lens. There's a certain look and feel that you get with that. Yes, you wouldn't want to use it all the time blown out because there's no background there, but as an impact image, it would be gorgeous to use that, and I would love to say use it for my brides when I'm inside, when they're getting like changed and into their wedding dress and things like that, and doing formals in the house where low light can be an issue. It would be beautiful to have that lovely depth of field that a 1.2 lens would get. But they're saying here that they're saying it's going to be $14.99. That's what the Sigma 35mm is. So it's probably going to be somewhere around that price range. But they're just saying here it describes the design of three 1.2 fast 50mm. There's also a 40mm and a 35mm primed for full frame mirrorless cameras. Now we've already got the 35 1.2, which is a beautiful lens. So I'm pretty confident that we'll soon get the new 50 1.2. A third design describes the 40 1.2, but I'm unsure if this one is going to be made for real. And there's just some specs there about the patent that's been listed. Do you think, would you be interested in a Sigma 50 1.2? I know I haven't used the Sigma 35 1.2, but I know people love it. I notice even Mike there saying love his Sigma Art lenses. I mean, I've used the 135. I've also used the 105. Those lenses were amazing. I used to have the 85 Sigma lens when I was shooting Nikon. I love that lens. They make amazing glass. The Art Series lenses are incredible. So I would expect a 50 1.2 to be outstanding. And it sort of does excite me a little bit. Again, as a Sony user, we're just getting more and more. We really are blessed, aren't we, with lenses now. So that's a fantastic thing, and I think this is a really good sign that we're going to get much more fast glass. 50 1.4 is that perfect portrait lens if you're doing, like portraits, walk around the streets. 35 and 50 is fantastic. If you want an amazing portrait lens, though, you need to go to 85, and that's why if you could get an 85 1.2, that would be outstanding. It's only a matter of time before someone releases one. As from 35s, the best 35 that I've ever used was the Tamron one that I recently used, which was the Nikon version. That was that one which was their 50th year celebration. That was a 1.4 lens, but that probably was the best 35mm lens that I've ever used. I would love Tamron to bring that out for Sony. Hopefully they will. Because that lens is superb. It's apparently the best lens that Tamron have ever made optically. And when I used it, I mean, you'll be able to see the video review if you go back. If you search my stream for Tamron 35, you'll find it. But it was shot on the Nikon cameras. But boy, that lens was superb. And I would love for Tamron to bring that out for Sony. And I'm sure over time, Tamron are going to release more and more lenses for Sony. And we'll start to get fast glass coming out as well. So that's fantastic. But great. I think it's brilliant. And I think Sigma should be commended for the way that they're starting now to really embrace this, the Sony platform, which is really good. And they make fantastic lenses. It adds competition now. If you don't want to spend as much as what Sony are, say, charging for their G Master lenses, you can step back to get the Sigma lenses, which optically are just as good and sometimes better than what Sony have got. So if you want to save money and get a great lens, yes, fantastic. They're usually heavier though, so that's one thing you do have to understand. They usually are a bit more beefier, built like tanks. But yeah, great. So I'm going to keep going because I'll be here forever because we're 43 minutes. So let's go 43. We'll come back for questions at the end though. If you can too, guys, I'd love it if you could give me a thumbs up. It just get the show out there. Remember, I'm unsponsored, so it does help me in getting the show, other people to see the show. So I'd love it if you could give me a thumbs up. 46 did. I've got 3 thumbs down, but 46 did have given a thumbs up, so I would love it. All right, so just some quick Sony news. Sony apparently have recalled some of their lenses. Now, I think you have to look at this code. It must be certain codes that are going to have the issue. Oh, yeah, it's part number. It says down here, part number 18502 to 182319. Now, apparently, there's a recall on that lens, and this happens. Good on Sony. Like I said, my A9 got recalled for the flash hots, the hot shoe at the top had to be replaced due to the fact they were coming off or something. There was an issue, so I've just sent it back and it's now been replaced. So these things do happen. But they're saying what happens with this is it says the camera does not accept operation when the lens is attached. Camera screen does not display properly, also when the lens is attached. So if you have got a lens with that number range that's there, you need to send it back. It'll be free to repair, but you need to send it back. So that's the first. So Nivac said his 16 to 35 is impacted. Yeah, well, you need to send it back, Nivac. It's a pain because it will get sent off, but usually they're fairly quick in returning these things, but at least they acknowledge it, and like I said, the hot shoe was an issue with mine, so I just sent it back through. Even though Nivac said he's never had issues with it, though, if it's in that range, Nivac, I still would send it back to get fixed, just because eventually it may play up. Also, in quick news, Sony has added the real-time tracking to the latest RX10. They've added animal IAF, real-time animal IAF, sorry, not real-time tracking. They've added real-time animal IAF as a firmware update. So if you've got that camera, you can now add real-time tracking through the firmware. So that's great. So there we go. So that's basically all there is in Sony news. Let's get stuck into Olympus. 43. I think I've stopped the... Is that stopped? I think I pressed stop. I did. I'll just have to look myself. So Olympus having trouble. So let's do... I'll take that time off because I don't think it's right. All right, so Olympus apparently... there's been big rumours going around the internet about Olympus are going to be closing down their camera division. Well, I noticed this morning on Petapixel that they'd said that it's not true. They've said they've officially denied rumours that it will shut down its camera business. And there's a whole story here talking about it. It just says down here, we are beginning in earnest to transform Olympus into a more powerful and agile company for sustained growth. And there's a whole thing that you can read here. I'll stick all these links down below that you can have a look at. So there's rumours going around that Olympus we're going to shut within 12 months. And they're just saying that they're denying it. But I did talk about this a while ago. And I think out of all the manufacturers that are out there, Olympus probably is the one that I would think at as being in the most trouble of anyone out there. And the reason for this is that due to the fact that it's the micro four thirds sensor that's in the Olympus cameras, they haven't gone outside of that at all. Now, if you look at, say, Panasonic have been smart. They've also gone from having the micro four thirds to just recently announcing the full frame versions of those cameras. So they are sort of expanding their user base in what's available for their customers, whereas Olympus haven't, unfortunately. And really looking at the releases that they've put out the last couple of releases really haven't been anything where I'd think, wow, you know, they've blown the industry, they've blown the industry away. They've done amazing things. So I'm not sure about how Olympus are going to go in the long term. Remember, we're dealing with camera numbers declining in sales, and this is the issue. So someone along the line is going to have real trouble, and I'll talk about Nikon in a minute, but some of them are going to have real issues because they're not innovating enough. And I think Olympus, unfortunately, have fallen into that track. They make great cameras. They make beautiful lenses. There's no denying that. But you've got this tiny sensor in there that's the issue. And it does take great photos in good light. But if you're dealing with low light, it becomes a real issue. You know, I think if you're dealing with shooting, say, in low light, you're better off to go to something like Fuji or something like that, which is APS-C or Sony. So I think Olympus probably are in trouble from their camera division, and it's an unfortunate thing. Now, naturally, Olympus are going to deny that, and they're going to say that, yes, everything's rosy and we're going to be okay and all that sort of stuff. But I talked about this 12 months ago, and I think that Olympus could be one of the manufacturers that could be bought out by someone else, because I think they're going to be struggling, unfortunately. That's just what I'm predicting, whether it's true or not, and I hope it doesn't happen. But I think in a declining marketplace, Olympus are really going to struggle. So that's really all I wanted to talk about that, and we'll have a chat about that in a minute. But have a read of the article anyway, and let me know what you think about that down below. So the last story before we open up Q&A was Nikon, because I wanted to talk about this. This is a really interesting one. It says Nikon says its cameras need to justify their existence as a business, and I'm not sure whether this article goes, yeah, it does go through quite a bit. I'm not going to go through the whole lot because I'll put it down below and you can have a read yourself, but it looks like Nikon are really struggling, and this really, I think, is awful, because I really love Nikon. I mean, I came from Nikon before I went to Sony, and I really do love Nikon as a company, and I think their cameras are brilliant and everything else. But they're obviously really struggling. If you read through the whole thing, the expectations are way down compared to what they thought they were going to be. You know, I think that they're talking about it's minus 20%. I think they're talking about here in the imaging business. It's down, I think overall it's down 9.6 or something percent. There's all these figures you can read anyway. Like, have a read of the article and see what you think. But either way, it's down a lot. And the interesting thing when you look at it is that everything is sort of struggling through that company, through the imaging section of Nikon. Now, I think one of the big problems was, and it says it in here, that they didn't get the sort of sales from the Z series that they thought they were going to get. And I think they were saying it's expensive. It just wasn't making the money that they thought they would get. And this is one of the big differences, say, between Sony and Nikon. And this is why I thought everyone was going on about the Nikon did the right thing when they went to this new mount. And I can understand why they did that. But in a way, it's a very expensive thing to do. Because if you're designing for two mounts, you're all of a sudden getting double the cost. So your R&D is developing for your normal lenses for your digital SLRs, and then you've then got to start designing also for the Z mount. So your R&D is double the cost. Sony don't have that problem because it's the one mount. So your APS-C and full frame, it's exactly the same mount. And you can use the lenses on the same system. So they're not having to do that R&D for two different systems. So they're saving costs. So in a way, they're in trouble just to doing that alone. Now, Canon have done the same thing, yes, but Canon are Canon. Canon will sell cameras no matter what. And I know people may not like me saying that, but Canon have the major name in the industry. And no matter what Canon basically do, because we've seen that, they've hit them with the cripple hammer and they're still selling their cameras. So Canon are always probably going to be selling cameras. And so even though they've changed the mount, you can use all the lenses there if you buy the adapter. With the Nikon one, you can't, because there's certain lenses on the Nikon side that won't work on the Z mount due to the fact of the mount just isn't compatible, and you have to use manual focus. So it becomes an issue. So I think it's looking a bit grim. They're saying really that fundamentally Oh, thank you so much, Ralph. Wow, thank you so much. They're saying Ralph just gave me a donation. I'll just go over so you can see there. Thank you so much, Ralph. Really appreciate that. So I think if you look here, you can see fundamentally rectify structure and strategy and address challenges appropriately to halt profit erosion. Market deterioration, including ML cameras, is worse than expected. Sales plan for ML cameras was overestimated. Across the business as a whole, slow execution on drawn-out decision-making. The competitive environment will intensify further, and the price and technological development alike. And then it gets even worse. So thank you so much, Eli. I'll just show Eli too, gave me a donation. Thank you so much. The positioning, though, it says, generate enough profits to justify its existence as a business unit and expand applications of core technologies. Strengthen brand and continue to deliver imaging experiences that contribute to the life and creative activities of the users. Apply our cultivated imaging technology assets in long-term growth areas. And the imaging products business will continue to respond to the expectations of stakeholders, etc. I mean, it's not good. And there's a whole stack more that you can read that I'm not going to go through here because I'll put the link down below. But like I said, in a declining marketplace, everyone has issues surviving, basically. And you know, I mean, we've even seen Sony over the last 12 months has not grown anywhere near. I think they were both more or less just stagnant. So it becomes a real issue now. Like I said, Olympus are really going to struggle. I think Olympus may be the first that could have real problems and may be bought out or something may happen in that regard. But Nikon, I was a little bit surprised when they come up with statements like that, you know, that when you're coming up with these sort of statements that says it has to justify their existence, things are not looking good at all. I mean, Nikon made a couple of mistakes. Let's face it. I know Fanomiak loves his the Z6, I think he has, or the Z7. I think he has the Z6. I know he loves it, but the issue was with that camera that they should have put dual card slots in that camera. When you're trying to deal with starting from the beginning, yes, if this was 5 years ago or whatever, 2-3 years ago, that would have been fine because that's what Sony did. They copped a bagging for it from Nikon users and Canon users because it was one card slot. But Sony did that, and at the time there was no competition in the mirrorless world. But now there is competition, and this is the problem. So Nikon brought out this camera. Canon did the same thing, but like I said, Canon is Canon, and Canon is still going to sell. Nikon brought out this camera that had the one card slot. That camera should have had dual card slots. If it had dual card slots, that would have stopped a lot of those problems that, you know, people not buying it, I think. They've improved the autofocus a lot. The image, the quality on that is great. The video on the Z camera is great. But it's really hindered by the fact that you've got that one card slot and now the mount. You know, like I said, you can't mount other lenses on there. Well, all of them. You can with an adapter, but they become manual focus lenses. So it's an interesting scenario. I hope Nikon survives. I really do. Because I think we definitely don't want people like Nikon or even Olympus to disappear because our industry needs that push to keep innovating. But when you're hearing things like that, they have to justify their existence. It's not good at all. I think what Nikon needs to do now, they need to pull out all stops and they need to produce a camera that is really going to exceed expectations. Like they really need to bring out like a great hybrid camera. And I think Nikon probably out of all the manufacturers won't hold back. So they need to bring out as soon as they can a really good Z camera that has the dual card slots, great video. The autofocus we know has been improved dramatically, and I think that's what they need to do now, and they need to do it in a hurry if they're going to survive, I think. So, yeah, I'd love to know what you think about that. And like Bradley just said, Nikon needs to lower its the Z prices or Z prices, period. So that's another interesting fact as well. All right, so let's have a quick Q&A. Let me go back to where I was. All right, so Thomas said, I love the new 14-24. Another great lens. It's like I said to you, they're really kicking goals, aren't they? I use it a lot now when I finally got a good wide angle lens. Yep. For me personally, 1.8 is more than enough on a full frame sensor. I love the compactness of the 55. I love that lens too. Great lens. The Sigma lenses are great, but way too big for me. And I agree with you, Bjorn. That's one thing you have to justify carrying that weight around. And that's one thing you either will do it or you won't. Lenses for me like that are heavy will be lenses that I'll only grab out occasionally. I wouldn't use them all the time, but it would be nice to have for that couple of impact shots. So that would be fantastic. But like I said, if you're happy with 1.8, that's fine. Guy with the camera, Samyang 85 is so cheap and small, hard to resist. Samyang are making great lenses as well. Hi David, sorry I'm late being out shooting fires, or does that mean putting out fires? Martin. Mike said Sigma is really a triple brand now. They are, yep, they really are now. You're looking at Canon, Nikon and Sony. It's fantastic, isn't it? It really is. Hero says, I wish Sigma made an updated for the full frame 50-100 1.8. That lens is amazing, but it's only for APS-C. Yeah, it is a good lens. I'm sure these lenses eventually will come out. The Sony marketplace is becoming so big now that manufacturers now are really starting to push out to support it. So I'm sure all of these other lenses, like I said, I'd love to see the Tamron 35 1.4 that they have brought to Sony. And I'm sure all these other lenses will be coming out eventually. Bradley, the A7S should be 6K 19 megapixel BSI full frame sensor for both videos and stills. Pixel pitch that large, coupled with a powerful new processor, you'll have a low light monster. And this is the interesting thing, Brad, that I'm saying, and you may be different to me, but I don't need better low light than what I've got now in my current cameras, because I think it's more than ample now. But some people may like to shoot in really extreme low light, and then I can understand what you're saying. But for me, I don't need better than what the a7 III will give me. That to me is incredible in low light. So I'm not sure if the sensitivity matters anymore, but it will to people like you, obviously, Bradley. So that's fine. Sigma 51.2, Photomix said, yep. Yeah, I would still send that back, Nivak. Even though you're saying it's not impacted, it's better to send it back if you're going to keep it. Hero says, I could see Sigma dropping a 50-85 and a 135 1.2 at some point. Gee, a 135 1.2 would be a massive honking lens, that's for sure. Moment of silence for Olympus. Mark said, wonder if the RX10 has the new red box. They haven't mentioned that, Mark. So, yeah, I wonder that myself. I would think the a7 IV will have that, though. That's another thing I didn't mention either. I think that will have it for sure. Does Olympus have tech that could make their camera unit attractive for someone else to buy? Well, you know, and that's the interesting thing. Would you buy Olympus? Do you think anyone will be interested in Olympus? Perhaps Panasonic may have. I mean, I don't know. The problem is I really think they should have thought about going APS-C a full frame. And that's the issue with Olympus. They've now really stuck themselves in that Micro Four Third market, and I'm not sure that's a really good idea. They could mean they will roll that over all their cameras, a7 III and a7R to be more exact. I'm not sure what that means. Mark was talking about. Pantex is also going bad, I think. Yep. Thank you for the donations, guys. Thank you so much. A guy with the camera said Nikon died with the D600 fiasco. Yeah, they had so many recalls on that camera. I had the D600. I had to return that due to the oil spills that were going on the sensor. Mike said Canon have the great lenses, and yes, firmware update was also good. But I love Nikon too. I hope they get better soon. So do I, Mike. I would hate anyone to disappear. Sadly, Nikon just have not listened to their users. If you look at their lens roadmap, there is not even an 85 for the Z mount. I know that's the problem. But remember, I suppose Sony struggled for a while if you're dealing with lenses, Mark. It took Sony a while to get a lens roadmap that was really good. So I would have to give Nikon the benefit of the doubt. I mean, the lenses they've produced are really good lenses. But yes, they do need to produce more. That's for sure. But can they, this is the problem, can they, now that they've been told what they've been told, can they afford to do that R&D? This is the thing that's going to be interesting. Ben said if it had dual card slots, I would have bought two. See, Ben's a wedding photographer like me, lives right near me actually, and I shoot with Ben a lot, and that's why he'd never bought that, because of the dual card slots. Jason said Fuji would buy Nikon and whip them into shape. Free Ike from Nikon, MJ said, I love it. He's put the hashtag. Bradley said Nikon needs to lower their Z prices. The industry is toast. It's tough. I mean, the industry at the moment is really a hard industry, isn't it? And I suppose it's camera phones. It's a lot of other things that what you've got is good enough. I mean, if you think about it, let's look at it another way. If you think about it, you really don't need to update from an a7 III. If you look at it, what that camera gives you, there is no reason to update, really. I mean, yes, you can get tracking and things like that the A9 gives me that I love to use, but I could get by easily on an a7 III probably for the rest of my shooting life, if I wanted to. That's the issue that I suppose you're dealing with now, and each upgrade has only been incremental. Sony have done that in the last few upgrades, have only been incremental upgrades. So it gets to the point where you think, well, shall I upgrade? You know, to force someone to want to upgrade to a new camera, it really has to be a substantial upgrade. It's like I said last week in the live show that the Sony a9 II you can buy straight away. That to me is amazing, to think that that camera has just been released and you could get it from B&H. I don't know if it's even available. Let me just say, I'm just going to see now. It probably isn't available now, but I'm just curious. Let's just have a look. It'll probably say it's out of stock. I know it was available last week. Oh, it's a Sony a9 II. Let's see if it is available at the moment. Nah, so it's out now at the moment. So it's now gone. Last week, you could buy it because I showed that when I was in the live thing. I was just showing here it's not available. It's on back order. So at the moment, it's on back order. So last week it was available at B&H and also Amazon, I think it was available at. Now for a new camera coming out, that's ridiculous. I think that was nuts. And the reason why that happens is because it's not such a big upgrade from the original A9. I mean, I'm not going to get the A9 II because it's not a big enough upgrade for me. If I was a sports shooter, yes. But I don't need to, because I know, I can't remember who it was, said that the A9 II is a little bit more sticky, and I'll test that when I get the A9 II in December for testing. But I don't need that at this stage. There's nothing in that camera, the A9 II, that would make me really go, wow, I've got to get the A9 II. Because it's just not that big a deal. It's just not that big. Whereas if they brought out a camera like the A9 II, it had 4K 60, if it had gone to say 36 megapixel in the sensor, if they put a better EVF in, because remember it hasn't even got the new 5.7 million dot EVF in, if they put a much better touchscreen at the back, then yes, I'd have a reason to say I want to spend money and do that. But the problem is camera manufacturers at the moment are only giving us these incremental upgrades, and this is the problem, that they've got to understand that they're hurting themselves, because it's going to force people to not wait. They're going to wait another generation before they upgrade, and I can understand that thinking, and that's probably what's hurting these manufacturers. That's why the sales are diving down, because the iPhones and everything else are getting massive improvements. Each one that comes out is a huge improvement over the previous one. But cameras, we're only getting this really incremental upgrade. And that's the problem. And, you know, look, I think they need to wake up, that they need to either say, well, we're not going to release them so often, and then we're really going to give big upgrades between the two of them, like have a massive step up between the a7 III and the a7 IV, for instance. Or they just need to say, well, we're going to lose money, because that's what's happening. They're all losing money due to the fact that there's nothing pushing people to step up to the latest one. Like I said, I'm happy with the a7 III. I'd love to know your opinion about that down below. So let's keep going on this. Hero says Nikon will be fine. They have a contract with Disney Parks and photographer employees. Where were we? It just jumped. I hate that. Sorry if I've missed any. I know. Nikon needs to fire the top executives, and hire ones that listen to its users. Closed protocol is also not helping Nikon. I know, how stupid was that? You need open mounts, for instance, like what Sony have done, because that has to help. The closed system nowadays is gone. You cannot have a closed system anymore. That was a stupid decision. They should have let anyone develop for that mount. I cannot understand that thinking. Robert saying hello from Brooklyn. Hi, Robert. Hero says, whenever you go on a ride or meet a character, there's a Nikon in your face with signs all over them. Is that in Disneyland? Well, I'll be going there next year. Quick question. Does using a neutral density filter reduce the highlights but retain shadow detail? Or the shadows getting darker? No, it does both. They both go down. I usually, the way I expose with an ND, just to sort of explain it, Elliot, is I always expose for the highlights. That's what I'll always do. I protect the highlights. If there was for some reason you wanted to go for the shadows, then I would let the highlights go. But the way that I tend to nearly always expose, I use the histogram. If I'm using a monitor, I'll use a waveform. But if I'm using the histogram, I'll just make sure that I'll take the clipping up to the point where it's just about to clip and then I'll drop it back a fraction. That's the way that I'll do it. If you're dealing with using log, well then you have to go about +2 over. If you look at, you'll have on the bottom of your LCD screen where you'll see it'll have your exposure, whether it's on 0, whether it's under. If you're dealing with shooting log, you want to go I usually go about 1.5 over actually. If you're shooting log, I go about 1.5. If I'm shooting HDL, I go about 1. I found I don't need to go up as high, but log, it's about 1.5 over. But I always protect the highlights if I'm shooting with the NDs and shooting standard. Pierre said Nikon should release the 70-200 2.8 as soon as possible. Yeah, see, this is the thing too. Like, they really should have looked right from the start of the 70-200 and the 24-70 2.8. I mean, they're the lenses that should have been all out right from the beginning. I agree. Hero says, I need the a7S3 to shoot a clean at 1 million ISO. Mike said, did you already test the DJ? No, I haven't. I've got the Mavic Pro, so I'm not sure I'll get that, but I may look at it when my Mavic Pro is no good anymore. But I'm happy with the Mavic Pro I've got. It gives me a good enough result for what I want to use. Again, having a business, Mike, I do have to be careful what I spend. I can't just justify updating everything all the time. For how often I use the drone, the Mavic Pro is good enough for what I want to use, which is just in weddings and things like that. But it does look really cool, like how small and everything it is. Olympus has a flippy screen, laugh out loud. Charles said, doesn't Olympus have really... Yes, Olympus has the best stabilization in the game. But remember, you're dealing with Micro Four Thirds, so it's a lot easier to stabilize a sensor that size than it is, say, an APS-C sensor or a full frame sensor. So you would expect that to be the case. I think, too... The two best, Olympus is by far the best that I've ever seen. Then Panasonic and the GH5 is the next best. They're the two that are by far the best, but Olympus does certainly have the best stabilization, yes. But remember, I think the future too is digital stabilization. I think you're going to find eventually it's going to go like the iPhone and everything else that has digital, which is amazing. I think that's the future. Jim says, g'day Jim. Greetings from Minnesota, where we probably won't see a thaw of winter until May. Joined Facebook finally. Yes, I did add you as a friend, Jim, on Facebook. Oops, where were we? The a7 III, poor video, no RAW, no good Kodak. Well, it does give good video, but yes, it's not got the amazing 10-bit Kodaks and things like that. That's where I'm saying that they have to bring out a better video type camera. I agree, but I wouldn't say it's poor. It's still a good result. I get beautiful video from the a7 III. Hey, Jim, my family up there said it was like 2 degrees. Wow, you have gone cold, Jim. Jim said, kudos to the admin moderators for running a tight ship at Facebook Photography and Videography School. Yes, please join us on that group if you haven't. It's a great group. I will put it in the link down below. It's basically an extension of our YouTube channel. Mark said, read the A92. You said that about the A6400. Kerry alert. I love it. That's funny, Mark. Look, I probably will get the A9 III, Mark. That's the thing for me. I think what's going to happen is I'll skip the A9 II, unless my A9 breaks or something like that, obviously. If that did happen, I would go out and buy the A9 II tomorrow. But having an A9, I just feel for me at this stage, it's just not enough of an update. So I'm going to wait 12 months. Also, the thing, Mark, too, that you've got to understand is when the A9 came out, I paid $7,000 Australian for that camera. Within 12 months, I think it had dropped down $2,000. I just don't think I want to have that loss again by going in and buying sort of these ultimate cameras that will have this massive decline in valuation over a 12 months period. So if I was to buy an A9 II, I'd probably wait 12 months and then see what happens. I just don't want to have that loss anymore. And I am still so happy with the A9. Everyone's talking about how cold it's going. Jim said, happy with both my A7 III and the A7R III. And so you should, great cameras. Maybe global shutter is the next step. Maybe, Alex. We just don't know. Langston says, all this holding back tech, they need to look forward and stop trying to maintain the status quo. I agree, Langston. Definitely. Mike said, the upgrade of camera bodies is like a car with warm seats. I don't want it. My ass is already hot. I love it. Mark said, that is a damn shame. It was genius. It is genius in my A9 now. Oh, he must be he's talking to Chris. I'm not sure what that meant. Jim said, thumbs up, please. Yeah, thanks for all the thumbs up, everyone. I do appreciate that. Every time he finds a trash bin, he thinks it's a good backdrop. I'm not sure what that means. Never thumbs up until it's changed back. He's talking about the time. There's a used A9 on B&H for $2,800. I know, what an incredible camera at that price. Look, the amazing cameras at the moment, if you want to get some brilliantly priced cameras at the moment, the A7R III, incredibly priced camera for what you get. If you don't need the 60 megapixel sensor, that's brilliant, and I can't recommend that enough. In fact, I've thought about getting that myself. The A9 now is really getting to be a good value camera. If you don't need the sports-based features that are in that camera, I would jump and get an A9. That's still going to be an amazing camera in 3 years. So the two really good ones at the moment are the A9 and the A7R III. You'll probably find as we get closer, or once an A7 IV is released, the A7 III is going to become a bargain, and that also will be an amazing camera as well. We're already starting to see discounts on that camera, so it's going to be interesting to see what Black Friday brings up. Couple of things too before we finish. Small Rig have contacted me. They are going to offer a discount to of 30% on up to 60 items. So if you are looking at things like cages and things like that, it might be good to check out Small Rig. I think on there's dates. I'll post all these dates when they become available. I'm not sure when that is. I think it's around the Black Friday time. So there is going to be big savings if you want to get anything on Small Rig. The other thing too is the LumaCube. They've contacted me this morning. I think they're going to end up giving me a voucher of $50 that I'm going to try and put in the photography videography school as a competition that someone will get a $50 voucher. So that's going to happen as well, I believe. I've got to wait till I hear back from them. So there should be other things that we hear from specials for Black Friday. Perhaps I'll get some other things sent to me that I can pass on to you. I've got another great video coming up tomorrow, which is going to be the Mars. I'm not sure if you've seen the Holyland Mars 400S. It's a wireless system for sending video from your camera to another monitor. It's going to be great for me because I can set up in my studio. Eventually, I want to start doing live shoots for Patreon and things like that I've got. I want to start doing live shoots and then beaming it to my camera, to my studio in here so that I can go live to YouTube with it. So I've got that happening. This Mars 400S is amazing. You can beam live video to 4 iOS devices, monitors and things like that. So I've got that review coming up tomorrow. Next week, probably Monday, I'll have a review up of the best slider I've ever used. These have all been sent to me, so I haven't paid for them, but I'd be honest with you if I didn't like them anyway. So stay tuned for that as well. So I've got a couple of good reviews that are coming up in the coming days. If you wanted to check out the last couple of reviews, I've put up a couple of reviews. The ND, Freewell NDs, I've put up the other day as well. So I've got some interesting things that you could check out if you haven't looked at those. Apart from that, everyone, that's about it for me for today. I've got to go and do some work. Pop down and get a quick coffee, and then got some editing and stuff like that I've got to do for this afternoon. So apart from that, everyone, I'll see you all in the other videos. If I don't see you on another live chat or whatever, have a great weekend. And I'll see you all for the next live, which should be back with Aaron on Wednesday next week. Aaron's been on holiday for 3 weeks, so we should be back with the live behind the photo show next Wednesday at the usual time that we do that. I think it's around 8 p.m. New York time. So we'll get that done for next week as well. So apart from that, everyone, I'll see you all for the next video. Bye now.